Star Trek: The Next Generation, Starfleet Academy. Mystery of the Missing Crew. Chapter 3. Data watched the doors of the turbolift open, revealing the bridge of the Yosemite and the star-specked view screen at the far end of it. The place was ghostly silent. Neither the android nor the yawn did much to lift that silence as they emerged from the lift and headed for one dimly illuminated console or another. "It's just as the computer said," reported Cinna from the navigator's position. Her features were bathed in greenish light as she leaned out over the instrument panels. She kept her voice low, as if out of respect for those who were no longer here. "All tactical systems are down," she continued, "except for the transporter unit and a limited shields function. All battery backup power is being used for life support and to maintain deflectors." "Wonderful," remarked Odril, who was standing by the helm. "What else could go wrong?" As if on cue, Legan gasped. Everyone turned to look at the communications console, where he had stopped and was staring intently at the monitor. Looking up at them, Legan said, "We're receiving a hailing signal from an unidentified vessel. They want to speak with our captain." His eyes grew wide with worry. "It's them," he concluded, "the ones who fired on us." "Why can't we see them?" asked Odril. "Shouldn't they be visible on the view screen?" "Not necessarily," Data replied. "They may be out of visual range at this point, or simply positioned behind us, where the view screen would not detect them, unless specifically directed to do so." "They want to speak with our captain," repeated Fillet. "But they already have him. They can speak to him face to face." "There is still no proof that they are responsible for Captain Rumiel's disappearance," the android reminded him. "To this point, we have only speculated to that effect." "That's true," Legan conceded, trying to make sense of the situation. "But who else could have done it?" asked Fillet, his eyes flickering in Data's direction. "Who else is out there? It had to have been them." Cinna looked to the android as well. "What are we going to do, Data? They want an answer, and there's no telling how they'll react if they don't get one." The android had no ready solution to the problem, as much as he wished it were otherwise. "Cinna's right," agreed Odril. "If we don't give them some kind of reply, it will only alert them as to how helpless we are." "Assuming they don't know that already," added Fillet. "Yes," said Odril. "Of course, brother, but let's not make that assumption before we speak to them, or we could be giving ourselves away without needing to." Seeing the wisdom in Odril's remark, Fillet gave in, though reluctantly. "As you say, brother, we'll speak to them first." "But if we speak to them," Legan added, "won't that reveal our helplessness even more surely than our silence? After all, the crew is gone. There's no one here but us, and we're hardly in a position to run a starship." "A good point," said Odril solemnly. Data was in agreement as well. "Unless," he said. Cinna looked at him. "What?" The android thought for a moment. "What if we were to give the appearance that the captain was still here, that the Yosemite was fully manned and ready for action?" Cinna's eyes brightened. "You mean take their places and act as if we were the ship's senior officers?" "Yes," Odril confirmed. "That's exactly what he means. Let's see." He stroked his chin. "There are 5 of us, enough to pose as captain, navigator, helmsman, communications officer, and science officer." "But we can't carry out the jobs of those officers," complained Fillet. "All we can do is stand at their posts." "That may be enough," commented Data. "And what about the bridge itself?" Fillet reminded them, indicating its confines with a sweeping gesture. "One look at this place, and they'll see that we're working with emergency power." Philae was correct. Data mused. Still, there might be a remedy for that. Given a little time, he told Dion, I may be able to reroute the power, now providing life support, to a low-priority area, such as a cargo bay, and deploy it here on the bridge. In that way, we can at least create a semblance of business as usual. Reroute the power, echoed Lagan. And how do you propose to do that, unless you have some technical expertise you've been hiding from us? The android shook his head. My understanding of ship systems, gained during my time on the Tripoli, is regrettably basic. However, my positronic brain enables me to absorb a great deal of information in a short period of time. Cinna grunted. And where are you going to get this information, Data? He moved to the science station. Right here, he told her. All I have to do is access Yosemite's computer through this terminal. It should not be very difficult. In fact, they're sending another message, Lagan announced from his position at the communications console. They want us to move off right now. Otherwise, his brow creased with concern. Otherwise, they're going to take hostile action. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. They just tried to come to grips with the deadly reality of their predicament. At last, Odril broke the silence. We can't move off, he said with a sigh. Our engines aren't working. But they don't know that, Cinna pointed out. She turned to Data. And with any luck, it'll stay that way. Indeed, said the android. Fired up by a new sense of urgency, he activated the science station monitor and set about learning about the ship's systems. It would have taken a human being hundreds of hours to learn what he needed to know about the Yosemite, but then Data was not a human being. Being a great deal like a computer himself, he was able to scan the information on the monitor as quickly as it could scroll by him. The yawn muttered softly in the background, no doubt finding it hard to believe that anyone could learn at such an incredible rate. However, in a matter of less than 3 minutes, he had become as knowledgeable about the Yosemite's power relays as any engineer in the fleet. What was more, he knew that he could make the changes he needed without moving from the science station. I will be finished in 30 seconds, the android announced. Recalling diagram after diagram, following the power circuitry in his mind, he directed his fingers from place to place on the control panel at a speed no flesh and blood organism could hope even to approach. Again, the yawn whispered among themselves, expressing disbelief in tones they probably thought Data couldn't hear, but his senses were many times more acute than theirs were, so he heard everything, and, true to his word, he finished his task in 30 seconds. Exactly. Sitting back, he turned to Cinna. I can now reroute the power supply. She smiled, still not quite believing what she'd seen. Then go ahead, she said. The android touched the appropriate space on the control panel. In the same instant, the bridge's normal light levels were restored, as if there were no problem with the ship's engines, and there never had been. All stations appeared to be in working order, even if many of them were linked up with crippled systems. Of course, the starry image on their view screen hadn't changed. It still failed to show them who and what they were up against. However, now that power had been restored to the bridge, that problem could be resolved with a minimum of effort. Computer, Data said out loud. Rear view. He had seen Captain Rumiel make such a voice request when he and the yawn were given a tour of the bridge shortly after their arrival. In the next instant, the scene on the view screen shifted, and they found themselves gaping at a huge space-going vessel, several times larger than their own, angular, foreboding. It looked for all the world as if it had been chiseled out of a hunk of dark gray stone. There were a few green and gold lights positioned at various points on the ship's hull, but nothing that even came close to resembling an observation port. That's them, breathed Lagan. He turned to Data. You did that just by asking? The android nodded. Apparently, simple functions can be voice-activated. More complex tasks, of course, must still be carried out manually. The reconfiguration of the Yosemite's power flow being a case in point. "They're still waiting," Cinna reminded her companions. "One of us is going to have to answer them." She paused as the implications of her statement came home to roost. "That means one of us is going to have to pretend to be the captain." The Yon looked at one another. None of them appeared to feel qualified to take on the role. Nor did Data blame them. After all, as Legan had noted earlier, they weren't even cadets yet. How could any of them be expected to impersonate the captain of a starship? Still, someone would have to do it, and quickly. The android was trying to decide which of them it should be when he noticed that everyone was gazing in his direction, and even then, it took him a few seconds to understand what they had in mind. "Me?" he queried. Cinna nodded. "It can't be anyone else, Data. You're the only one who has even an inkling of how the ship works and what it's capable of. The rest of us would fall flat on our faces." "But I am not programmed for duplicity," he protested. "It is not my makeup to lie." "It's not in ours either," explained Odril. "The ability to deceive has never been held in great esteem by the Yon." "At least your emotions won't give you away," argued Legan. "If it was any of us in the captain's chair, they'd see how nervous we were and suspect that we were up to something." The android shook his head. "Surely there must be another option." "There isn't another option, and don't call me Shirley." Judging by his companions' expressions, they didn't seem to agree, and there was no time to mull the question over any further. At any moment, the beings in the big gray vessel might make good on their threat and attack the Yosemite. Turning to the captain's chair, Data considered it for a moment. Then, very deliberately, he approached it. This would be the biggest challenge of his life, he mused, by far. The fate of the Yon, the Yosemite, and perhaps even the missing crew depended on his performance in the next few minutes. He resolved that he would not let them down, at least, not if he could help it. Chapter 4. Gathering himself for the task ahead, Data sat down in the captain's chair and took a long look at the view screen. "Legan," he said. Out of the corner of his eye, the android could see his Yana comrade turn toward him. "Yes?" "Can you bring the commander of the unidentified vessel on screen?" Legan hesitated as he inspected his control console. "I think I can," he responded at last. "Then by all means do so," Data instructed. He did not look back to see if Legan was following his orders, just as a real captain would not have looked back. However, he knew that the orders had been carried out, because a moment later the view screen showed him the commander of the alien ship. The being was almost skeletal in appearance, with deep, round eye sockets, prominent cheekbones, and a pair of collarbones that jutted out at sharp angles. His eyes were small and red, like tiny drops of smoldering lava. They told Data that their owner was far from amused by the situation. The alien's bridge crew wore the same expressions. The android counted 6 of them in all, each of them 3 of each sex. Though he didn't know how their people divided up the responsibilities of running a space-going vessel, he guessed that their roles roughly corresponded to those used in Starfleet. "My name," he told the aliens, "is Data. I am in charge of this vessel, which is called the Yosemite." It was hardly a lie, under the circumstances. "With regard to your earlier communication," the alien commander cut Data short with a wave of his hand. "Will you move off or not?" he insisted. His tone was one of impatience, even more so than before. The android straightened a bit in the captain's chair. This was a most important juncture, he recognized. If he chose his words less than carefully, he would be responsible not only for his own destruction, but that of the Yon and the Yosemite as well. "We have no intention of moving away from our current coordinates," he announced. "We are here on a peaceful mission of exploration, with no desire to harm anyone. Unless you can give me a sufficient reason to depart, We will maintain our belief that this sector is as open to the Federation as to anyone else. Data waited for the alien's response. It wasn't long in coming. We do not feel obligated to give you a reason to leave, the commander informed him, other than the destructiveness of our weapons. What is more, if you do not withdraw from this sector in 5 lunar millicycles, we will demonstrate just how destructive those weapons can be. Without pausing for a reply, the aliens terminated the communications link. Instead of their bridge crew, all Data saw on the view screen now was a picture of their vessel hanging ominously in space. Looking around at his fellow cadets, the android did not see a great deal of confidence displayed among them. The yawn looked off balance, even fearful. As they exchanged glances, even Cinna seemed to be at a loss. How much is 5 lunar millicycles? Asked Odril. Is that a lot of time or a little? Data could only guess. Given the average length of a lunar cycle in our galaxy, he said, 5 millicycles would translate into about 5 minutes. He could have supplied a more precise answer, but he was beginning to learn that most people did not require such exact information. Legan slumped at his communications post. We are lost, he moaned. We do not stand a chance of surviving an assault, not with our shields at minimal strength, and not with both propulsion and weapons facilities on the blink, Fillet added mournfully. Cinna sighed. And even if those systems were in working order, she observed, none of us have the expertise to operate the ship. She looked at the android. With the exception of you, Data, and even you can't be everywhere at once. He had to agree that that was true. They were indeed in a bind, with no obvious way to get themselves out of it. Odril glanced from one of his fellow Yon to the other. If we are to die, he said, at least we can do it together. We can take some solace in that, if nothing else. And what could Data take solace in? His uniqueness? His lonely status as the only known positronic consciousness in the universe? Fortunately, the android was not ready to die. Not in any sense of the word. Not as long as there was even a slim chance of avoiding it. He said so, too. We can still survive this, he told the Yon. They looked at him as if he had just claimed to be the head of Starfleet Command. It is not probable, but it is possible. And I, for one, do not intend to give up until I have exhausted all avenues of resistance. Having said his piece, Data got up and headed for the turbo lift. The lift doors opened, and he walked inside. Deck 2, he said. He was surprised when he heard footsteps behind him, and even more so when he saw Cinna hurrying after him. As she joined him in the compartment, he saw her face turn up toward his. You are coming with me. You are coming with me, he noted. It was more of a question than a statement. Yes, answered Cinna. I guess I don't believe things are completely hopeless either. And even if we do eventually meet with destruction, I'll be able to face it better, knowing that I did everything in my power to prevent it. Data tilted his head, puzzled. I do not understand, he confessed. I have been given to believe that your people always act as a group. I find it remarkable that you would diverge from the actions and apparent feelings of your fellow Yon. Cinna didn't respond. Perhaps she found her behavior remarkable as well. In any case, they didn't have much more time to ponder the question, because the turbolift doors were already opening on the Yosemite's weapons room. The place was bathed in a thin red light, all the computer had allowed and under emergency conditions. Still, it would be sufficient for the purpose at hand. Obviously, the android said as they stepped out, we cannot get all the ship's systems up and working again in such a limited amount of time. However, the weapons function is one of the simplest to bring back online, and if we are successful with it, It'll buy us time to restore some of the other systems, Cinna finished enthusiastically. Data looked at her as they walked. Exactly. Arriving at the primary phaser control console, a large metal unit with several control pads built into it, he attempted to carry out a manual command. The system didn't respond. Of course, he hadn't expected it to, but it never hurt to check. We will have to make further adjustments in the power supply network, he explained, and then run a diagnostic to make sure the phasers themselves have not been damaged. Cinna nodded. What can I do to help you? She asked. The android indicated one of the secondary consoles with a tilt of his head. Run the diagnostic. It will not be difficult. The readout itself will guide you. In the meantime, I will attempt to link us to an appropriate power source. As they set to work, Cinna's jaw muscles fluttering with concentration in the ruddy light, Data resolved to keep track of how much time they had left. So far, they had expended nearly a minute, giving them slightly more than 4 left by his reckoning. Even with luck on their side, they would need all of it. For a while, there were no sounds in the weapons room but those of Cinna's breathing and the tapping of their fingertips on the control pads. They didn't talk because that would only have slowed them down, and if the Yana was turning up any questions, she was apparently able to figure out the answers on her own. Finally, the android raised his head. Phasers are back online, he said, though it will take another minute or so before they charge up. How is the diagnostic routine coming? Almost done, Cinna replied. A moment later, she turned to Data with a grim smile on her face. You were right. The readout did guide me, and it seems everything is running perfectly. She had barely finished her statement when Legan's voice flooded the room. Data, he called, a distinct note of urgency in his voice. I am here, the android assured him. Cinna and I have completed our task. We are only waiting for the... It's too late for that, groaned Legan. Our time is up. The aliens have struck, as they said they would. He paused, as if trying to fight down a wave of panic. They've beamed something aboard, he said. Several somethings, in fact. Data absorbed the information. Are these somethings objects or organisms? He inquired. There was another pause. We can't tell, came the response. And we don't know enough about the internal sensors to find out. The android frowned ever so slightly. He could have gotten the answer readily enough if he were on the bridge. However, as things stood, there was a quicker way to obtain the facts. Which of these things is closest to the weapons room? He asked. Again, there was a pause. There's one in the corridor outside, Liana declared at last. Maybe 30 meters forward of your position. Data turned to look at the open doorway. Acknowledged, he said. I recommend that you obtain phasers for yourselves from the closest supply facility, just in case. He didn't remain to hear Legan's reaction to that. He was already crossing the room and peering out into the corridor. Unfortunately, he couldn't obtain a clear view of the intruder, if it was an intruder, so easily. From his vantage point, the corridor looked empty. However, less than 10 meters from the weapons room, the corridor bent to the left and thereby obscured whatever was past that point. Where are you going? Asked Cinna, who had caught up with him. I am attempting to determine the nature of what or who was beamed aboard, the android told her. But what if it's dangerous? She asked, or it has a weapon? Then it will be better to find out sooner rather than later, he advised.